Welcome back to the deep dive. We're glad you're here. Before we jump into today's stack, just a quick request. If you get any value from this, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps us keep the lights on.
And today's research is, well, it's heavy.
That is putting it mildly. We are unpacking a book that it frames itself as a literal war manual. We're looking at the ebook Insufferably, Gynocentric Hegemony Force Field to Reduce Fertility by Conrad Riker.
Yeah, Riker doesn't pull any punches. He obviously calls this the most dangerous book ever written. And, wherever you land politically, when you read it, you realize he's tapping into a very specific, very raw nerve.
He is. This deep dive is aimed squarely at a specific listener. If you call yourself red-pilled, or, if you're a man who's been watching how our institutions are changing HR, the courts, the universities, and you have that feeling that the game is rigged.
Or that the rules have been rewritten in a language you're not allowed to speak.
Exactly. Riker is writing for you.
He says his audience is the man who has woken up in the middle of the night, sweating, realizing he was played. The guy who did everything right, worked hard, got the job, was the nice guy, only to find out the whole system turned hostile.
So if that sounds like you, the author's message is pretty direct. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy Insufferably. He also has a Substack at Conrad Riker,
But our mission today is to take a really incisive look at his core idea.
which is that female emotional logic has been weaponized into state policy.
To dismantle Western civilization, it's a huge claim.
It sounds almost like a conspiracy theory until you start looking at the mechanics he lays out.
Okay, so let's start there, the title. Gynocentric Hegemony Force Field. It's a mouthful. Break that down. What is this force field?
So gynocentric, centered on women, hegemony, dominance. Riker's arguing we're not just dealing with feminism as in, voting rights. He's describing a biological, psychological, and institutional barrier, a force field that actively repels male ambition.
And he says it's not an accident. It's a mechanism. It's a mechanism. He calls it the hive mind, or ideological possession. And it works through a very specific process of social control. He uses the acronym GSR.
Gossip, shame, rally.
That's it. Riker says this is the industrial scale machinery of female power. It starts with gossip. A woman identifies a target, usually a man who's too independent or, frankly, too successful.
Okay, so you acquire a target, but gossip is everywhere. How does it become a weapon?
It becomes a weapon at the shame stage. This is where phrases like, he's creepy, or he's toxic, or he makes me feel unsafe get used. They're not facts, right? They're feelings presented as facts.
And then comes the rally.
The rally. This is where the hive synchronizes to get him fired or socially canceled. Riker calls it a mass formation psychosis. Delusions are synchronized to attack anyone who steps out of line.
Which she applies directly to the corporate world. He has this term, the infantilization machine, for HR departments.
That chapter was something else. He cites this stat, that 81% of workplace bullying complaints are filed by women against men. And your first thought is, okay, maybe men are just bullies.
But Riker completely flips that interpretation.
He does. He argues, well, men hold most leadership roles, so they're the ones giving orders, pushing for results. But in the hive logic, that directness, that competence, it's seen as aggression. Excellence creates hierarchy, and the hive wants sameness.
He had that story about the woman in Toronto. I mean, this one sounds almost like satire, but he presents it as a real case study.
I had to double check that one. She filed a police report, not an HR complaint, a police report, because a male coworker looked at her shoes.
He didn't say anything to her.
Not a word, didn't touch her, just looked.
Okay.
But Riker's whole point is that under this gynocentric system, her subjective feeling of being ogled was treated like an objective crime. The system took it seriously.
It's just like that story he told about the Tesla engineer.
Oh, that one is brutal. Because it's about the death of merit. A top engineer gets demoted. Why? Because he refused to go to an inner child workshop.
I remember his quote, "I don't have an inner child. I have code that runs."
It's a great line, isn't it? But in this new environment, Riker argues that's a toxic statement. The system demands emotional compliance. It wants to nurture you, and if you just want to be effective, you're a threat. If you refuse to be nurtured, they have to destroy you.
So the workplace is just the front line. The real damage, he says, is institutional capture. Law, education, media. Let's start with the law. He calls it the gynocentric legal state.
This is where the force field gets written into actual law, and the prime example he uses is the protection order scam.
The numbers on this were just staggering.
Riker claims 93% of domestic violence orders are filed by women. But, and this is the key, He says something like 60% of them have zero evidence to back them up. They're used as a tactic.
Get the husband out of the house.
Instantly. You file the order, you get the house, you get leverage in the custody battle. It's the silver bullet that divorce lawyers talk about. And it ties into what he calls the maternal presumption in custody fights.
Right, he tells that story about the pediatric neurosurgeon.
I mean, a guy who saves children's brains for a living, high status, disciplined, competent. He was denied custody of his own kids in favor of a mother with 3 DUIs.
How is that even possible? It defies all logic.
It defies male logic, objective logic. But under gynocentric logic, according to Riker, the mother is the default. The father is just a wallet or a potential threat. Her DUIs didn't matter as much as the sacred archetype of mother. The system protects her dysfunction over his competence.
And this leads right into education. If the law strips men of their rights, the schools strip boys of their identity, the education collapse.
Or reprogramming centers. He talks about the language. I think it was a college in Oregon that banned the word man on housing applications.
Banned the word man? What did they replace it with?
Chest haver.
You're kidding me, chest haver.
Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? But Riker's point is that this is the real-time erasure of male identity. You can't be what you can't name. He talks about how schools punish toxic masculinity, which he defines as just natural boy energy, roughness, competition. Boys are punished for being boys.
And the media holds this whole thing together. He has this idea of emotional truth. This feels like a central pillar of his whole argument.
That's the cornerstone. Emotional truth is the idea that if a woman feels something unsafe, threatened, whatever, that feeling itself is an objective fact that must be acted upon. He points to the Jackie Rolling Stone story.
The UVA fraternity hoax, which is completely made up.
Completely. But the slogan at the time was "Believe all women." To even question the story was a moral crime. Riker says these aren't just slogans, they're tools designed to suspend due process. He claims female editors reject almost 90% of articles about men's issues because they disrupt that emotional ecosystem.
So we've got the workplace, law, schools, media, but then he goes for the wallet. This has to be his most controversial chapter, the parasite class.
This is where he connects the destruction of the family to the growth of the government. It's that classic red pill idea, the state as a surrogate husband.
Explain that, because usually welfare is framed as an issue of poverty, not gender.
Riker's argument is that in the past, a woman needed a husband for resources and protection. Now, the government provides that, so women can effectively marry the government. He cites a statistic that female-headed households are over 5 times more likely to be on long-term welfare.
So the tax-paying man is funding families he didn't create.
That is his exact framing. He says it subsidizes family breakdown. If the state is the provider, the biological father becomes obsolete, or just a tax source. And this completely warps the dating market. He calls it the hypergamy spiral.
Hypergamy being that instinct to date or marry up in status.
Right, but social media broke it. He talks about the beauty betrayal, filter surgery, thousands of likes. It creates this false sense of market value.
Right.
Women present a perfect avatar online and expect a top 1% man, but men are seeing the reality and just checking out.
That anecdote about the woman leaving her fiance, that one really stuck with me.
The guy who was stable, save for the wedding,
Yeah.
she left him for a podcaster.
A broke podcaster.
A broke podcaster who had a personal brand. Riker says this is proof that clout has replaced stability as a high-status signal. Women are chasing attention, not character.
And the end result of all this, he says, is that men are just opting out.
He calls them herbivore men, like in Japan. They look at the legal risk of marriage, the financial risk of divorce, the dating market, and they just say, no thank you. They stop playing a game that's rigged against them.
Which leads to the final, the ultimate consequence if men stop playing.
You get demographic collapse, the fertility crisis. Riker is blunt about this. He calls it civilizational suicide.
And he draws a direct line between female political power and falling birth rates.
Yeah, he cites an OECD study. It claims a 10% increase in women in politics correlates to a 6% drop in the fertility rate.
That's a huge correlation. What's his theory on why?
His theory is that female-dominated politics will always prioritize safety and comfort in the now over the risk and sacrifice needed to build the future. He calls it reproductive sabotage. High-status women delay or abort children for their careers. He has a stat that 13% of the global population has been aborted since 1980. Then demand men pay, through taxes, for their freedom.
It's a really dark psychological theory. He calls it the motherless revolution.
Right. He argues that modern leftist dogma is actually repressed maternal instinct. It's the terrible mother archetype from mythology. Because they aren't nurturing their own kids, they try to smother all of society, treat men like predators and everyone else like infants. It's a worldview that just kills vitality.
It's an incredibly bleak diagnosis, but he doesn't just leave it there, does he? He has a section on the solution, the return of the king.
Correct. He pivots to praxa. It's his term for action. But he's not telling men to protest or vote harder. He thinks the political system is a lost cause. He's telling them to build something new.
So what does praxa actually look like?
Step 1 is brotherhood, male-only spaces. He gives the example of a logos lodge.
It goes back to that chest haver idea. If you don't have a space to be a man, the identity itself fades away.
Exactly. Men need a place to rebuild, to think, without female oversight, without the GSR dynamic, a place where logic and hierarchy are valued again.
And he also talks about stoicism and discipline.
The standard stuff, cold showers, working out. But more specifically, unplugging from the gynosphere. Getting off the apps that fuel the hypergamy. Stop giving your attention and energy to a system that hates you.
The one piece of advice that really stood out was tear immunity.
That one's very controversial, but it's central to his whole thesis. He basically calls female tears emotional extortion.
That's a tough one to practice, though. I mean, biology is working against you.
It is. We're wired to protect. But Riker's advice is to never apologize for neutral behavior. If you did nothing objectively wrong, you don't apologize just to make someone stop crying. The moment you do, he says, you've submitted to emotional truth and you've lost your own frame.
And finally, reclaiming language.
Yeah. He says men have to study logic and rhetoric to dismantle these arguments. He has that line, equity is envy with a sociology degree. He wants men to use logic like a scalpel to cut through the emotional fog.
It's really a call to arms, but for a war of the mind.
Riker ends with this. The civilization you're waiting to save is already dead killed by the women who are supposed to nurture it. His ultimate message is that men need to stop apologizing, stop feeding the machine, and build their own parallel world, one based on logic and beauty.
Look, whether you agree with him or you find this whole thing terrifying, you can't deny that he offers a framework that explains a lot of the friction we're all seeing.
It connects the dots. From your HR department all the way to falling birth rates, he presents a unified theory for why things feel so off for so many men.
If you want the full war manual with all the data and the full breakdown, you need to check out Insufferably by Conrad Riker. It's on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
And definitely follow him on Substack. It's at Conrad Riker. He uses this same lens to analyze current events. It's interesting.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wrap for this deep dive. We hope it gave you something to think about. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.
Stay awake.
We'll see you next time.